I'm going to get started. So for everyone who doesn't know me, I see a few familiar names. My name is Michele Schultz, and I'm one of the physical therapists at React Physical Therapy at their Lakeshore East location. Anthony Abbonato is going to be a panelist helping me out today, and he is another therapist within the company out of our Wilmette clinic. Just a little background about React. We are a boutique style outpatient PT clinic with 6 clinics around the city and northern suburbs. And at React, we focus on a whole body approach and stress one-on-one care. At our Lakeshore East location, we have providers with an array of specialties ranging from women's health, doing internal and external work, as well as vestibular therapy. We are offering telehealth services at this time, as well as in-clinic services. So if you are interested or want to refer a client over, we can usually get you in quite quickly. And in Illinois, we have direct access, meaning that you do not need a script for PT services prior to coming into the clinic for an evaluation. And we also are offering complimentary injury screens. Before we get started, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to place them in the chat throughout the presentation, and Anthony will flag me down. I want to make this as interactive as possible and as helpful for you guys as possible. And if anyone misses anything, you can always rewatch the recording, as these slides and this video will be available for you on our website. So I'm gonna share my screen with you guys to get the presentation going. All right. So I'm super excited to talk to you guys about how to manage upper trap tightness and or associated upper back pain with use of self-releases, stretches, and a functional warm-up. With spending more time at home and performing home workouts, or if you just are returning to a regular exercise routine as gyms slowly begin to reopen, it is important to incorporate simple movements into your everyday schedule and routine to decrease your risk of injury while trying to stay active. Personally, I have found that performing specific exercises as warm-up, particularly in the shoulders and upper back, to be extremely helpful in elevating my performance during my workouts. The ones I will be demonstrating will help to create a balance between flexibility and mobility and strength, particularly for injury prevention. So we're going to start with looking at the anatomy of the trapezius to begin. It is a large fan-shaped muscle that extends from the cervical spine, which is the neck, to the thoracic region, which is your upper and mid-back area, on the posterior side of our body, which is our back side of our body. It consists of 3 parts: the upper fibers, the middle fibers, and the lower fibers. So here are the upper fibers, the middle fibers, and the lower fibers here. So what can lead to upper trap tightness and or associated shoulder pain? It can be a combination of highly repetitive work, forceful exertions, a high level of static contractions, prolonged static loads, and constrained work postures. So a little epidemiology behind upper trap tightness is about 20% of the adult population suffers from this upper back and shoulder pain associated with the upper trap tightness. Women often experience neck pain and develop persistent pain more than men do. These risk factors include work tasks involving more static loads on the neck and upper back muscles, high repetitiveness, low control, and high mental demands. So some characteristics about the presentation of upper trap tightness. When we have poor posture, the upper traps can become tight and we may feel like there are knots in our shoulders. And this is why many of us report that we carry stress in our shoulders, or think that it feels good to have a massage in our shoulders to help relieve some of the tension as the pain and stiffness presents after periods of inactivity. This tightness can also lead to headaches and neck and upper back pain. However, these symptoms usually ease if you do the correct exercises. So just as the upper trap is overactive in most people, the middle and lower trap muscles are commonly underactive or weak. And in most of our exercise routines, we do not include proper strengthening of the muscles of the middle and lower trap. If the middle and lower traps are strong and work properly, they are able to help hold our shoulders back and down to allow for more improved posture and decrease the chance of other problems occurring. So, something that you could do to perform a quick postural assessment on yourself. So you can do this now or you could do this later, but place yourself in front of a mirror and stand in a comfortable position with your arms at your sides, preferably a sleeveless shirt. That way you can see the way that the shoulders are lying and associated to your body. You can take a look in the mirror or take a mirror selfie and review the photo. So what do I look for? Is your head in front of your shoulders if you're looking in this mirror or the photo? And are your shoulders rounded forward? When your alignment is off, it has an impact on your whole body. Think of it as a chain reaction. Poor posture pulls other parts of your body out of line, leading to muscle pain and other problems. This is similar to what might happen, for example, if you favor a sore knee. It affects not only your knee, but often your hip and back, which are now out of an alignment. So another assessment that you can do is, are your shoulder blades moving symmetrically? So what you can do is you could take off your shirt or stand with a sports bra on and have somebody behind you with a camera. You can start with your arms at your sides, and you can slowly raise your arms out to the side, over your head, and then back down. And then you can review that video. Does one shoulder blade move more than the other? Does one shoulder blade stick out more than the other? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you likely have tightness and weakness in your traps. So, how do you fix this? So in terms of management, one of the things that I really hone in on is being very conscious of your posture. So even when you are sitting and eating a meal, think about your posture. You want your head up and your eyes looking at people or whatever is ahead of you, maybe the TV if you're a TV watcher when you watch or when you eat dinner. So a 2017 study found that people who participated in a 6-month program that included posture training and exercises designed to strengthen the upper back and periscapular muscles were able to reduce kyphosis, which is the rounding of your upper back, and upper trap tone, compared with people who did not go through the program. This suggests that a targeted exercise program aimed at improving posture can be an effective treatment for these deficits. And similarly, an analysis published on April 29th of 2019 found that exercise was able to improve kyphosis of the upper back. And researchers concluded that strengthening it appeared to be more effective than just stretching alone. So this is one of the exercises that I do with most of my clients here in the clinic, just because with a majority of our jobs requiring us to sit for most of the day, you're falling into that forward head, upper back rounded posture. So I usually go over this with anyone that comes in with upper back, lower back, upper trap tightness, neck pain, any of the above is super helpful in incorporating in our days. And even for someone like me, it's just something to keep you more mindful of your positioning and your posture. So I'm going to read the slide to start, and then I'm going to close out of my presentation and demonstrate it for you guys. So the starting position is you're going to sit up nice and tall with your back straight and your shoulders back. You're going to sit at the end of the chair on top of your sit bones, which are called the ischial tuberosities, distributing your weight evenly between both sides. Your knees should be bent at a 90-degree angle with keeping your knees even with your hips and your feet flat on the floor. So I'm gonna turn off my screen sharing. Okay. Is it back to just me, Anthony? Okay, I hope that it's just back to me.
Yes, you're all good.
Okay, cool. All right, so for the postural exercise, so I'm gonna sit on back. Okay, so first I'm gonna get my chair at a 90-degree, so that my knees are bent at a 90-degree angle. So for me, that's a little high, right about there, My knees are bent at a 90-degree angle. You're gonna sit up nice and tall, shoulders back, as if you're squeezing a pencil between your shoulder blades. And I like to make this an active exercise for you guys. So not only am I gonna sit up in a nice tall posture, but I'm giving you some cues to think about. And what I'm gonna have you do with this exercise to make it more active is to set an alarm on your phone every hour, and you're gonna hold this specific posture with the activity that I'm gonna tell you to do for 2 minutes. The more that we do that, the more mind-body connection that we'll have to get into that posture throughout the day with having to think about it less. So with my knees at a 90-degree angle, feet flat on the ground, sitting up nice and tall, shoulder blades down and back, and then a slight chin tuck. So I almost want to start creating a forward head posture that'll create a straight line between my neck and upper back, because most of us sit in a posture like this and the head comes forward. So to get everything in a proper alignment, this is how I'm going to start the exercise. Now to make it more active, I'm going to have you act as if you are bringing your heels towards your butt, but not actually performing the exercise. So you're isometrically contracting those hamstrings. When you isometrically contract those hamstrings, you're turning on that core. So again, sitting up nice and tall, slight chin tap back, squeezing my shoulder blades actively in the back, and now getting the hamstrings involved to turn on that core. This is the postural position that you will be holding for those 2 minutes every hour as you're sitting throughout the day. It's probably going to feel like a very long 2 minutes, but I promise you the more that you do that again, the more your body's going to get in that position on its own. Okay, so that's the first exercise. And now I'm gonna get in some demonstrations about how to release the upper trap, and then we'll do some stretches. And then I'll show you a functional warm up to maintain the changes from the releases and the stretches. So to first release the upper trap. So the upper trap again is located in this area back here. But usually, if you have tight upper traps, you can palpate around this area and you'll feel tenderness right away. So I want you to palpate one of those tender spots. Now, if you have a Theracane, which some of you may have, some of you may not, you could totally use this. This is actually a little bit more effective than if I was just using my fingers, because you can increase the pressure that you put onto that area with the top of the cane by pushing down on the cane itself. But not all of us have this, and I'm not going to tell you to go out and buy it just for cost purposes, or especially during a time like this. So you can also just use your hand. So I'm going to show you how to do it with your hand. So I'm going to place my hand on that tender spot and apply pressure. Now, as opposed to just holding this spot or rubbing back and forth over it, I like to perform movements. Just to make sure that when we do those movements, you are actively working at the different fibers of the muscle, and you'll increase your range of motion in your neck. Because a lot of times if we have that upper trap tightness, we lose some range of motion if we turn our head, for instance, or bring our ear down to our shoulder, or even looking up. So I like to incorporate those movements in to help restore that mobility. So again, pressing on that area firmly, I'm going to start just performing an up and down motion in my neck. Usually I say to do about 10 to 15 moves in each direction. So let's say I did 10 to 15. Now I add the rotation pieces. You can do it to both sides. You may feel the upper trap is tighter if rotating towards one ear or the other. I like to incorporate both though. So I'll do about 10 to one direction, 10 to the other direction. You can also bring your ear down to your shoulder in both directions. So that's one way to release the upper trap. Now let's say that you have a spot in your traps that's a little bit lower and you can't necessarily reach it. I can show you how to do it with a lacrosse ball with laying on the ground. Now I will say this is a little bit more intense. So by doing it on the ground, you can also do it against a wall, but I tend to to find it to be a little bit more effective when I perform it on the ground. So I'll show you guys what it looks like. And I'll angle my screen down a little bit. Okay. All right. So let's say I can't reach that spot. So I'm gonna push the ball on the ground and lay on top of it. Now you wanna make sure that you're on soft tissue, not bone. Bone's gonna be quite painful and uncomfortable, so I'm gonna make sure you're on soft tissue. So here's a spot for me on that muscle. Now the motion that I like to perform with this, because now that my head's on the ground, it's not going to be as effective, and it's a little bit closer to the shoulder blade in general, so I want to make it a movement that would be more beneficial. So one of the ones I like to do is shoulder flexion. So bringing your arm up and overhead. I like this motion too because a lot of times if we have upper trap tightness, we have some tightness in that shoulder. So by working through this motion, you're kind of doing a reciprocal inhibition, so meaning we're going to be turning off the upper traps and turning on the muscles of the shoulder that are responsible for this motion. Again, I like to perform about 10 to 15 movements in this direction. So that's a couple ways that you can release the upper trap using the lacrosse ball. So now that I released the upper trap, now I want to keep the length in the muscle, because essentially what happens is that trigger point gets all our fibers balled up together. So now that we actively release that muscle, now it's in a lengthened position. But now I want to keep the length. So let's perform a stretch to keep the length in that muscle. So specifically for the upper trap, one that you can do is bringing your ear down to the shoulder and using the arm on the side that you're leaning towards to give it a little extra push. You should be feeling the stretch on the opposite side in this specific upper trap. I tend to recommend performing the stretch twice in each direction for about 30 seconds. However, if you feel like that one side's more tight than the other, you can hold it for a little bit longer. Just kind of listen to your body and see what it can handle at the time. So that's the upper trap stretch. Now there's a muscle that's associated with the upper trap called the levator scap, and that's located very close to the muscle in the back of the neck. But there's a way that you can target that muscle a little bit differently than the upper trap. So the way to do that is to bring your chin down towards your armpit. So you're gonna face it towards that direction. Again, you're using that hand on the side that you're going towards to give a little extra pull in that direction. You should feel a little bit more in that back of the neck. Again, holding twice for 30 seconds in each direction. But again, if one side feels a little bit more tight, then you can just hold it for a little bit longer. Again, listen to your body. All right, so that kind of concluded the upper trap release and the stretch. But if we go back to that picture that I showed you guys during the presentation of the rounded shoulders and the forward head, this muscle right here, the pec, tends to get super tight too because of those rounded shoulders. So one of the ways that we can turn on the muscles that we want to strengthen in the back is to open up that chest. And one of the ways to do that, similarly to the upper trap, is I'm going to do an active release technique followed by a stretch. So I'm going to angle my computer over towards the wall because that's where we're going to perform it. Okay. All right, so I'm going to use the lacrosse ball again. So I'm going to place it on one of those tender spots that I can find in my pec. I just did an upper body workout, quite tight in my pec. So mine's pretty easy to find. And a lot of people are tight in their pec, so this shouldn't be too hard. You're going to place the ball on that spot and lean against a wall. Now make sure you get yourself at a place on the wall where you have space to move your arm back and forth. So right now I'm going to be using my left arm as opposed to my right because I wouldn't be able to move my arm against the wall. So make sure you're placing it at a spot at the wall where you're able to actively move your arm up and down. So again, placing the ball on that spot, and then similarly to the upper trap stretch, working the arm into shoulder flexion. Again, about 10 to 15 reps. So that's one way to release the pec. So now I'm going to show you some stretches. So once you release it again, we want to keep that muscle lengthened. So I'm going to show you the pec doorway stretch. Move this so you can see me a little better. Okay. So this is called the doorway stretch, but for demonstration purposes, because I have the wall here, I'm just pretend that I'm in a doorway. So your arms are going to be in a goalpost position with your arms on the door hinges per se. And you're going to walk into the doorway with your arms on those hinges, and you'll feel a nice stretch through the front of that chest. Again, just like the upper trap and levator scap stretch, you'll hold this twice for about 30 seconds. But again, if it feels good, you can hold it for longer. I usually just recommend that in the beginning. Now let's say that one side is tighter than the other, which is not uncommon. So I'll show you how to do it using one arm at a time. So I'm going to place my forearm on the wall, similar to how I did the doorway, but now I'm just going to use one arm. I'm going to rotate my body away from the wall to get more of a stretch through that one side. Again, holding twice 30 seconds, but listen to your body. Now, sometimes as well, when if we do that stretch, we tend to have possibly some pinching in the shoulders because our arms may not be able to get in this position quite easily. So I'm going to show you how you can perform the stretch on the ground using a foam roller. Okay. All right. So I'm going to lay on my back on the foam roller with my head at the top of the foam roller. And again, if you have that pinching in the shoulder because you're bringing your arms up too high, you don't have to worry about it with this stretch. You can start low and slowly bring your arms up to where you can feel a nice stretch in that pec without feeling the pinching in the shoulder. Again, you can hold this twice for about 30 seconds and also just listen to your body. So that was, again, releasing the pec and then stretching it out. Now, a lot of the times as well, when we're in this forward position, we tend to get that rounding in the back, like I mentioned. And when that happens, the joints in our mid-back here tend to become really stiff. So there's a mobilization that you can do to open up that area and to get some movement in those joints. So I'm going to show you how to do that also using the foam roller. So as opposed to when I was performing the pec stretch, where the foam roller was parallel to my spine, now it's going to be symmetrical or perpendicular to the spine. So I'm going to lay down with it starting at my mid-back, the foam roller, and put my arms behind my head. But again, if this is uncomfortable for you, where you have that pinching in the shoulder, you can always place those arms across your chest. So putting my arms behind my head here, just because that feels better for me, you can just go over the foam roller back and come back, back and forth. You can also move the foam roller to different spots depending on where you're feeling that tightness in that mid-back in those joints. I like this one particularly for myself because you have the force of gravity helping to get a little extra mobilization. But there's another way that you can do this in sitting that may be better for you to perform during the day when you're sitting in a chair already. It just may be a little more time, less time consuming. So I'll show you how to do it with a chair. So you can also use the foam roller on the chair to get a little bit deeper into that thoracic spine, but let's say you don't have a foam roller. You can totally do it without it. Just make sure that you have a chair with a back so that you're able to go over the back of the chair. So sitting up nice and tall, similar to that postural exercise, putting my hands behind my head, or again, if you can't tolerate that, you can just put your arms across the chest. And just leaning back over the back of the chair. And I like coming in and out of this movement. So I usually say, just kind of like the other ones, 10 to 20 reps of this. And again, while you're sitting in your chair, if you set that alarm on your phone to perform that sitting postural exercise every hour for 2 minutes, this is an easy one to throw on to also get that movement in that spine. That'll help pretty much all of the neck and thoracic, so the neck and upper back pain and tightness that you're experiencing. And you can do that throughout the day. And again, the more mind-body connection, the more that our body will get in that position without having to think about it or perform those exercises at some point. Okay, so I went through the active releases and the self-mobilizations and the stretches. So now that we release the muscles, we lengthen the muscles, now we want to strengthen them so that they stay in that position. So I'm going to show you a few of the ones that I tend to use before my workouts that I find pretty effective to help during my workouts, specifically to turn off my upper traps so I'm able to strengthen my mid-back. So the first one, I'm going to perform in sitting. So you don't have to use a pole. You can do it without a pole. You can also use a TheraBand. But I personally like to use the pole because it'll help remind me to move my arms back symmetrically. But again, you don't have to use anything. If, let's say, you're going to a class or you're going to the gym and you just want to do this really quickly, you can do it without it as well. So sitting up in that postural position that we talked about earlier, so sitting up nice and tall, shoulders back, chin tucked back. All you're gonna do is extend your arms back straight behind you. Hold for a second or two, and then come back down. Performing this motion, we'll turn on the middle and lower traps and then turn off those upper traps. Again, I like to perform about 2 sets of 10 to 15 reps of this one specifically. Perfect. You don't even have to do this one in sitting either. You could also just do it in standing. Let's say if you're at the gym and you just want to do it really quickly before you start a workout. You could just do it in standing. Again, just be mindful of your posture when you're doing this in standing. All right, so that's exercise number 1. So it's pretty simple, pretty easy to do at any time of the day. So now I'm gonna show you one that I like to do on my stomach. The first one I'm going to do on my stomach is called Superman's. So laying flat, I'm going to start with bringing my arms overhead. Now, this position already is getting my lower traps involved, but I want to make sure that we're pinching those shoulder blades down and back so the upper traps do not get involved. So I'm going to make sure to squeeze my glutes to take some of the tension out of the back, in case you do experience that in this position. So make sure to squeeze your glutes simultaneously with the motion I'm going to perform. So with lifting my arms up, I'm going to squeeze my shoulder blades down and back, bringing my elbows towards my spine, holding for 2 to 3 seconds, and then coming back up towards the top. Again, performing about 2 sets of 10 to 15 repetitions of this exercise. You You can also do this with one arm. Let's say if one arm's a little bit tighter than the other, you can just pull down on one side. Again, squeeze those glutes to take that tension out of the low back. You can also vary this up by performing different shoulder movements. So you can do something called swimmers as well, or at least I like to call it that. So you're going to act as if you're scooping water away and then bringing your arms back towards the top. And I want you to forcefully push your arms down as if you're scooping water. That will get more muscle stronger muscle contraction and get just more activation in those muscles that we're trying to warm up prior to your exercise routine. Now, let's say you're not in a regular exercise routine yet. I do recommend you doing these exercises because we want to make sure that we're strengthening the muscles that we lengthened. If we're not strengthening them, you're not going to find that you're going to have long-term changes. So make sure that you're performing these in a specific order, okay? You can also, again, do this with one arm. All right, so I'll go over that one more time. So this is Superman with both arms. Superman with one arm. Swimmers with both arms. You're scooping water. And then with arm. The final exercise I'm going to show you is here on the ground again, but I'm going to stay on my knees here. I'm going to get on my hands. Now I'm going to have you sit back on your heels as opposed to being up into quadruped or into a tabletop position. Sitting back on your heels will lock out your low back so you're getting more of the mobility through your upper back. I tend to like this exercise by putting my hand behind my head. But again, if you have that tightness in the shoulder, you're feeling that pinching in the shoulder, then you can do it with your arm behind your back this way. But I tend to get more mid and upper or mid and low trap activation by putting my arm behind my head. So with my arm behind my head, I'm going to squeeze that shoulder blade down and back and turn off that upper trap and rotate away. Again, when you squeeze that shoulder blade down and back in this position, you're turning off that upper trap and then turning on those muscles of the mid and low trap. So you can hold it here if that feels good to you, or you can do it with a combination of some repetitions and holds. Again, with all of these exercises, about 2 sets of 10 to 15 reps, but listen to your body. And I'll show you what it looks like with my arm behind my back if you have that shoulder pinching. All right. So those are all the activation exercises. So I showed you how to release the muscle, then continue to lengthen it through stretching, and then in order to maintain the length in that muscle through those strengthening exercises. And again, I showed you these because a lot of my workouts incorporate movements like this. So if yours does not, there's some other variations of different exercises that you can do, but you really want your functional warm-up movements and exercises to mimic what you're going to be doing for the workout itself. So I'm going to start sharing my screen with you guys again, just to finish up the presentation. Okay, so I did those demonstrations for you guys. All right, so in summary, so the goal is to utilize these active releases, stretches, and functional warm-up exercises to release the upper traps and strengthen the middle and lower traps. Your body and muscle temperatures will go up. This increases the oxygen and blood flow throughout the body. and your muscles and joints will be stretched out properly before you get into more intense activity. And when done right with regular performance, you can improve your athletic performance and also help prevent injury by effectively addressing the weaknesses and deficits through specific exercises targeted for these areas. And compliance is super important in order to see this change. Does anyone have any questions for me about anything that I talked about with you guys today? And I'm just gonna pull up on the next screen my contact information. So I, again, am at React Physical Therapy at their Lakeshore East Clinic. And this is located specifically off of Michigan and Randolph, more so Michigan and Columbus, right behind the Blue Cross Blue Shield building. There's my email. I check it quite frequently, so that's probably the best way to reach me. But otherwise, our clinic number is posted right below that. And again, this presentation and recording will be posted for you again. So if you ever want to reference anything that I talked about again, or the demonstrations, it'll be available to you. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so I can see the chat. Does anyone have any questions? I really appreciate all your guys' time today and for tuning in. I'll stay on for another minute or so in case anyone has any lingering questions. And again, if you have questions that you think about later on, just feel free to email me. It will be on our website at bereact.com, and there'll be a link for the webinars. No problem. Well, I appreciate everyone's time again, and I hope you have a good rest of your week, and I hope you found this information helpful. Thanks so much. No problem, no problem, no problem. All right. See you guys.